What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we have some Destiny 2 news in the form of TWID. This week in Destiny, of course. I nearly called it the TWAB already once again, but in this one Bungie talk about some more updates that we're going to see in the mid-season patch for Destiny 2. They also speak about plans for the Crucible, including changes to spawns and matchmaking, so we'll touch on that. But additionally, they speak about Solstice of Heroes that'll be kicking off next week. We get a first look at the new armor and the featured weapon for the event this year. Plus they touch on a possible buff for the Wicked Implement at some point in the future. So a few interesting things to talk about in this one today. As always, I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you do, a rating below really does help us out. But otherwise, let's get into it. And so firstly, Bungie talk about the mid-season Crucible update, and they confirm that it will be dropping next week on the 18th of July. But they say today we have 2 patch notes that we managed to sneak away with last week. So some additional changes that we're going to see include that they fixed a few out of bounds spots in various maps in the Crucible. And then also for Whisper of Chains, they say they've reduced damage reduction in PvP from 15% to 5%. So a bit of a nerf for that one right there. And those are in addition to the other changes they outlined in the last update that we will be seeing in the mid-season patch. But they also say on the subject of Crucible, following from the LIGHTFALL Crucible blog, we have a few updates around Season 21 mid-season, and back when we launched Season of the Deep, we made a couple of tuning changes to Crucible that missed patch notes. And they say many players have called out the respawning changes, but the second change has been mostly uncommented upon, so we wanted to let you know what has changed. And so firstly, they say we made a number of adjustments to control and clash respawn logic. All Crucible respawn points are evaluated on a number of factors, and previously in Control, it was very strongly weighted to friendly objectives and enemy sidelines and proximity. But with the goal of helping players get back into the action quicker on some of the larger maps, we reduced the importance of friendly objectives and enemy sidelines and increased the importance of friendly players. Ideally, players would spawn near other friendly players, but safely. And in testing, this seemed to work well on a variety of maps, but it's hard to replicate the chaos of real 6v6 matches, and many players noticed. And we turned the influence of enemy player sightlines down too far. This causes a number of problems that players have reported. And so in the first hotfix after the mid-season patch, which is next week, we're going to be increasing the influence of enemy player sightlines and proximity back to where it was before. Ideally, we keep some of the benefits, like spawning nearer to active engagements without the downsides of spawning in the middle of a fight, but they say they'll be keeping an eye on feedback and stats over the coming weeks and continue to adjust as needed. So that's an extra change that we'll be seeing at some point in the nearish future. But they also say the other big change was competitive division matchmaking. And so in Season 21, 3v3 matchmaking is calculated based on both rank and skill, and with the goal being to improve the ladder climbing experience while maintaining competitive integrity and match fairness. So if you are near your target skill, we'll match at your rank rather than skill, and we limit how far above or below your target skill you match. So if your skill marks you as an Ascendant player, for example, you'll never be considered below Adept, no matter what your current rank is. And the same goes for if you are above your target skill, you'll never be considered more than one major rank above your target skill. But in terms of a few changes they're considering for the future, firstly, adjusting the rank and skill limiting so that it doesn't limit at all if you are above your target skill. But secondly, loosening up on the division points throttling we do if you are too far above or below your target skill. So a bit of an explanation as to the change they made right there at the start of this season, but also some potential future updates. And so it's good that they are at least discussing some of this stuff. Next though in the TWAB, they confirm the winner of the Witherhoard ornament vote. And so the winning ornament is the one that we can see on screen. Pretty cool looking thing, obviously with the Season of the Deep vibe. And I believe this will be launching into the game sometime around final shape. So let us know what you think about that and whether it's the ornament you voted for. But here they talk about Solstice of Heroes. So they say we'll head on over to the European aerial zone once again and fight against waves of enemies to earn rewards and silver leaves. But before the event starts, they want to give a refresh on the basics of how armor upgrades work. And they say they're implementing 2 new buffs to mix it up even further. Firstly, there is Firebound, and this buff is only available in Bonfire Bash, and when close to a fireteam member, we gain increased recovery and super regeneration from the armor. On top of that though, there is Flare, and this buff is available in Bonfire Bash and the Vanguard Ops playlist, and we can rapidly defeat combatants to unleash waves of paracausal fire around us, dealing damage to nearby enemies. So those sound kinda cool right there. But they go on to say during Solstice, we can chase down a desired roll on our armor, and if we're looking for 100 discipline for the best grenade builds, or more recovery for better survivability in Crucible, Solstice will be the time to shine. So upgrading Solstice armor requires finding and spending silver leaves, silver ash, and kindling. So silver leaves will drop by completing activities throughout the game. Then for silver ash, we can transform silver leaves into ash by completing the bonfire bash activity, then go ahead and spend that ash to re-roll armor stats from the armor mod screen. But finally with kindling, we can earn it by completing Solstice event challenges, then we can spend it to upgrade our armor stat roll potential, and each piece of armor can be upgraded 3 times. They also say though that the new Solstice armor sets will feature both free and paid glows like in previous years, and fully upgrading a piece of armor with kindling will cause it to glow. So it's going to work in a pretty similar fashion to what we've seen previously. And for previews of that new gear, firstly we have the Warlock armor right here. Certainly looks pretty cool, slightly different vibe I guess than in previous years, or at least a slightly different style. Moving on we get the Hunter, and of course the Strand glow has been added right there as well. Then very finally of course we also get the Titan, but here is a preview of the upcoming Solstice weapons. So this is the first Strand rocket launcher that'll be earnable during the event. We did make a separate video the other day looking at potential stat rolls for that rocket launcher, so if you want to see that in more depth, I'll link it down below. But give us your thoughts in the comment section. Are you going to be jumping into Solstice of Heroes this year? I might work on the armor pieces, but certainly I'll be going after the rocket launcher. Otherwise, I'm not too fussed about the cosmetic side of things, but that's just me. Give us your thoughts down below. There's a little section in the TWAB as well, where they speak about the Wicked Implement, and they say, we have heard feedback on the base weapon, and we have a few buffs on the way, but among other things, we were cautious with the timing window for creeping attrition, but we are looking at adjusting it in the future, so keep an eye out for that. And so just a very minor tease right there about a potential future update to Wicked Implement. Obviously interesting given that the weapon's only just launched into the game, but I guess most of us won't complain if it gets some kind of a buff. Very finally right here though, we have some separate news today, and shared by Destiny Bulletin, Bungie won a $489,000 lawsuit against a Destiny 2 player who threatened and harassed Bungie's community manager. And so this is something that's happened this week, but going back I believe a year or two ago now, this individual had sent a slew of messages to a particular community manager, making various threats against them and their family. But things escalated when the individual actually found contact details for this community manager, which resulted in them making direct phone calls, ordering items to their home address, and a whole bunch of other crazy stuff. And despite how anyone feels about the game, or the way that things are handled, or indeed the jobs that community managers do, obviously it's pretty unacceptable that things would escalate to that level. And so ultimately Bungie opened a lawsuit against the individual, and obviously as the employer they have a degree of duty of care, as this was in relation to that community manager's job. And so now that individual is responsible for nearly $500,000, and that's to cover various fees and compensation, which is a pretty crazy number right there. But it's also paved the way for it to be easier for Bungie to do this in future, as well as for other firms online, and for employees of game developers and software manufacturers. And so obviously for anyone who thinks it's funny to make death threats and things like that, it's certainly worth keeping in mind that they can catch up to you in a very serious way. And there's a whole thread about that, so if you want more of the details about exactly what is in the lawsuit, I'll link that down below. In other news though, this week Bungie have their grand opening for the new Bungie headquarters. So a lot of developers and folks have been sharing their first impressions, images, and even videos of the massive new development space. And Bungie's headquarters, according to Destiny Bulletin, have gone from 84,000 square foot to more than 200,000 square feet. So the studio has literally more than doubled in size, which is pretty crazy. There was a cool video shared right here, which Destiny Tracker posted, showing off some of the screens which show marathon concepts and various 3D printed weapons in some of the cabinets. So Bungie are absolutely splashing out on this new headquarters, and I figured some of you guys may find that interesting. For today though guys, that is everything we have to speak about in the video, so as always I hope you've enjoyed this one and found it useful. If you have, a rating below really does help us out, and also be sure to get subscribed to the channel so I can keep you posted with more Destiny content. Otherwise though, as always, I appreciate you all tuning in today, and I will catch you guys very soon.